I moved to Stonecross Village in Wealden, East Sussex in 1998. This was Google Earth's view of Stonecross on the 6th of June 2013. The town of Eastbourne lies between Stonecross and the Channel to the south, but the village's setting is predominantly rural landscape rather than built environment. So in 2014, I was surprised to be notified by Wealden District Council of a planning application which told me that my back garden here had been right next to a brownfield site for 16 years. I was concerned about the application because Section 1 said that the applicant's name was not the applicant's name. Applicant name, Zender. Are you an agent? Yes. So we are not to know who is applying to have houses built here. Yet I had to give my name and address just to comment on the application. Section 2 said that the agent was Pierce of CKA Architectural Cons. Apt, you might think, if you listen to the end. Section 4 said that the building would take place on land within the curtilage of and adjacent to 2 mill villas. Section 5 reveals that even before the application was made, us were told by a council officer named Forder that he was positive with regard to developing the land. Either Forder has preternatural powers of prevision, or he was fairly confident about the compliance of elected councillors. Section 14 is puzzling. The current use of the site is said to be residential, though it is a garden and vacant, and when it stopped being used is unknown. And was the adjacent land being used as part of the garden? The last 3 answers, however, are clear. There is no problem with contamination, though the planning application twice asserts that the planning proposals will make good use of a brownfield site. Parties with a financial interest have rendered the phrase brownfield site somewhat elastic, but I think that these attempts to define it would be acceptable to most people. Land that has been developed for industrial purposes, polluted and then abandoned. Land in a town or city that was previously used for industry and where new buildings can be built. A piece of industrial or commercial property that is abandoned or underused and often environmentally contaminated. Here is an overview of the site, which includes an old wooden cabin, a detached garage, an old brick outbuilding with outside toilet, a greenhouse, a carport, and oak trees protected by a tree preservation order. Here are 3 photographs which form part of the application. And here is what's going to happen. Section 25, Certificate of Ownership, did not certify ownership. According to a Gov.uk website, the local planning authority must not entertain an application for planning permission unless the relevant certificates concerning the ownership of the application site have been completed. In this certificate, Pierce claimed that all reasonable steps were taken to find out who owned part of the land. That is, notice of the application had been published in local newspaper, Sussex Express, a newspaper of which I have never heard, though I've lived in Sussex for 33 years. That paper appears to be based in Horsham, whereas the building site is less than 1/4 of a kilometre from Eastbourne, which had 2 well-known papers. 2 site plans in this application included a corner of my back garden. Here I have superimposed a plan from my land registry folder on one of them. The green arrow points to the remains of a wall, named so on the builder's plans that I photocopied in Crowborough planning offices. On my plot it was only 1 or 2 bricks high and hidden beneath undergrowth. I had never experienced problems concerning property ownership until I moved to Wealden. where there are people and public services of a quality that I had not experienced before. I moved into Wealden in September 1998. 2 months later, a neighbour, Clive Maybury, fenced off a 1.5 metre wide strip of my front lawn in order to widen his drive. When my land registry documents belatedly arrived from Portsmouth District Land Registry the following January, I was able to show that the land registry document that Maybury had shown me to justify his fence was a forgery. Deceit on a scale I found very surprising, until I discovered that Maybury is an ex-metropolitan policeman. I asked for the fence to be removed, which was prelude to 5.5 years' harassment, including assaults, helped a little by a Wealden official who had told Maybury that I had complained about a shed, roughly in the shape of a crude windmill, in his front garden. Maybury was friendly at the time with the dishonest Smith person, who lived at 2 Mill Villas. Maybury was also friendly with people who moved in on the other side of my bungalow, the foul-mouthed Mr. and Mrs. McCombie. They claimed to own the back wall of my garage, and fixed a lamp and trellis to it, and clematis which was climbing up into the roof space. I took the matter to the appalling Eastbourne County Court, thinking that it might take all of 10 minutes to show my title plan and the land registry document which explained that the freehold land edged with red belonged to me, but I was lumbered with an old Your Honour type judge called Coltart, who looked as though he should have been retired years before. Coltart opined that more than half the walls in England must have things growing up them, and fined me £30 for not providing a report from a chartered surveyor. A second hearing took place nearly 3 months later with another judge, but I was not there as I had not been notified that it was taking place. 2 months after that, Coltart sat again and stayed the case for 3 months. Well over 3 months after that, Coltart sat yet again and ordered that there be no order on the application to lift the stay. He ruled that I could pay another court fee for the case to continue, but I didn't bother. The foul-mouthed McCombies were 2 of the 3 people, including Maybury, who, in 2004, assaulted me in my back garden after my side gate had been smashed open, and they invaded my back garden with 3 other people. As a consequence, I was arrested by the dishonest and corrupt investigating officer P.C. Francis and his accomplice, the dishonest P.C. Wilkinson, had my website closed down by Sussex police, my computers taken apart, and a hard disk trashed in an attempt to destroy evidence. When I checked the 2 boundaries at the end of my back garden, I discovered that McAlpine's fencing contractors had put a fence in the wrong position, giving Smith of 2 Mill Villas the opportunity to fence off part of my garden with barbed wire to extend his own garden. Months later, Smith admitted in the presence of a solicitor I employed that this old post marked the corner of his garden, and later offered to buy for £500 the land which he had previously claimed to own. Smith then erected fences which appear here in the planning application. I think this red line marks what was the southern boundary of 2 Mill Villas at the time. Among the images I saved in 2002 was a small plan of 2 Mill Villas. Smith's neighbour to the north was an East Sussex employee named Hall. His property by the boundary with mine was badly neglected. A wall had fallen over so long ago that the event was recorded by the depth of indentations in vegetation. I tried to discuss the position of the boundary with Hall, but he rudely dismissed the idea. An old wire fence on his side of the wall was in a very bad state. You can see a post in the photograph on the left. so I erected a simple wire fence to preserve a boundary line from my side of the old fence to my side of the post identified by Smith, abandoning a small area, the northernmost point of which was marked by this post, which someone had pulled up by the time I photographed it. Smith told Hall about my fence. Hall then claimed that the wall was his and said I was to remove the fence. On the 3rd of June 2001, hearing voices at the end of my garden, I went out and discovered Hall and another man discussing the rebuilding of the wall. Hall made a jeering reference to my surname, Madden, for the amusement of his companion. The next morning I found that the fence posts had been pulled up and the wire cut to pieces, so I took the scum Hall to court. After prolonged preliminaries, a trial eventually took place, with Coltart presiding, at the end of which Coltart decided that he knew better than the land registry surveyor where the boundary of my property was. The wall belonged to Hall. I objected that a buttress on my side of the wall showed that to be untrue, but he said that the buttress could have been added afterwards. I was concerned when in March 2014, Wealden emailed me a letter from K. Williams, Head of Planning and Environmental Services, which told me that the council had decided to approve the building application and were unable to respond to any further correspondence relating to this matter. That was the catalyst for this video, to which I want hastily to add 3 points. One building would endanger oak trees, protected by a tree preservation order. Many studies of tree root systems agree that oaks are among the thirstiest trees and can dry clay soil like mine to the extent that subsidence can occur, though precise details vary. I'll give you the figures that Bexhill's Subsidence Claims Advisory Bureau considers sensible for oak trees. Suggested minimum distance from property, 18 metres. Maximum root spread recorded, 30 metres. The buildings would further encumber the setting of a 2-star listed building, Stone Cross Windmill. A statement in the planning application purporting to come from CKA Architectural Consultants Limited declares, there are 3 existing dwellings between the windmill and the proposed properties. Because the height of the proposed development is lower than the above-mentioned 3 dwellings, it will have little, if any, impact from street level. The new buildings will add to the clutter already seen in the mill's field from Beachy Head, including 2 bungalows Hall was allowed to build. You can perhaps evaluate CKA's statement from the little you can see of mill villas on the left in 2 photographs of the new development you will be able to see in a moment, remembering that the land falls away to the right and any view of the mill from that direction would be affected by foreshortening. One of the 3 existing dwellings is one of Hall's bungalows, of normal height, unlike the thing named a bungalow which blots out part of the sky as seen from my garden. The semi-detached houses would overlook my property and deprive me of privacy. The properties have been designed such that there will be no overlooking or loss of sunlight to neighbouring properties. None of the windows to habitable rooms at first floor level will face the adjacent dwellings. It will be observed that special design criteria has been adopted in the proposed construction of the dwellings so as to avoid any overlooking from habitable rooms situated at first floor level towards adjoining properties. This is the view of the new semi-detached houses as seen from my garden. My fence behind the satellite dish is the regulation 6 feet high. This is 22 inches higher. This is the view from my dining room, and this from my sitting room. If you've stayed the course, thank you for listening. Bye.